Stop at 2 to the baby bonus. Today we'll be looking through the history of it. During the war in 1940 to 1945, many locals faced tough conditions with little to no money. It wasn't the ideal condition to have children, and majority of the schools were closed. However, after the war there was peace. Furthermore, the unprecedented growth of Singapore's economy led to higher wages, better living conditions, and more opportunities for education. Singaporeans found it easier to maintain themselves and seized the opportunity to have more children. Singapore's population increased by 90% within 20 years, and this period is thus known as the baby boom. However, the market was already very crowded and busy. The introduction of more young workers would lead to oversaturation and overburden the economy. People could either be jobless or earn very little. The government's solution to that was the Stop at 2 policy. The government slammed the public with slogans such as "Girl or boy, 2 is enough" and continuously reminded them to only have 2 children. They put in place many disincentives and also continuously promoted through propaganda the Stop at 2 policy. The measures put in place had fast effects, and by 1978, the total fertility rate dropped to 1.86, below the natural replacement rate. With the aging population and decreasing population, the PAP introduced the baby bonus policy in 2001, which granted money to new families and put many incentives to having children. So, what were the effects of these two policies put in place by the government? The initial idea of the Stop at 2 policy was such that 2 Singaporean adults would have 2 children such that they could replace each other at the natural replacement rate. However, many Singaporeans took it to the norm to have 1 or no children at all. And with a mindset change, many of them realized that, why do we need to have so many? And because of that, the TFR fell. In 1976, it was 2.11, and by 1978, it was 1.86, below the UN replacement rate of 2.1. As such, the LA Times quote-unquote called it too successful and that the plan had backfired on the Singaporean government. So, how did it backfire, and did it really backfire? Well, firstly, the government had put in place many disincentives towards having 3 or more children. 3rd and 4th children were given low priorities in education. The cost of having children would increase incrementally as you had more children. Furthermore, a mindset change also took place, and more people thought that having 1 or no children at all was better. Furthermore, market inflation took place. The cost of milk also increased. Baby powder could cost as much as $30. With such prices, who want to have children? And thus, the TFR continuously dropped. With the continuous decrease of the fertility rate in Singapore, in 1986, the PAP finally decided to call it quits and finally end the Stop at 2 campaign. In summary, one could look at the Stop at 2 policy as a double-edged sword. On one hand, it definitely did decrease the TFR in Singapore, but on the other, it gave its fair share of consequences, such as the aging and decreasing population. Thus, in conclusion, we say that it was far too effective and brought along some problems that we still face today in Singapore. We will discuss these issues in the later segment of the video. We now go on to review the second policy put in place, the baby bonus scheme. Introduced on 1st April 2001, its aim was to provide cash gifts to help parents defray the cost of raising a child. Expected to cost $260 million yearly, there was surprisingly no significant improvement and the total fertility rate dropped. And why so? Firstly, the amount was not enough to cover the expensive and tedious task of raising a child. In Singapore, we live in an extremely competitive and stressful environment. Everyone wants to be the best and to be successful. If a parent wants their child to be successful, they have to send their child for enrichment lessons, tuition, or for art lessons. The cost of these lessons would further take up the disposable income of young parents. Furthermore, a small cash gift does not signify how much time it takes to take over and mature a child. Time and patience are all many factors that one has to put account while taking care of a child. In summary, the baby bonus scheme is inconsequential. The small amount is not substantial enough to cover the expensive cost of raising a child. As such, the falling total fertility rates are not being improved upon, and thus, there are more challenges that we face as a country moving on with a small population. After reviewing both policies, we now discuss what emerging issues that take place due to the consequences of both policies. There are 4 main issues we wish to discuss. The first issue is our national defense. Our SAF is composed of national servicemen. If there are low birth rates, we cannot have enough young males enlisted for national service, and our defense force will suffer. As an important maritime nation, defense is of great importance to trading companies and trading partners. If investors see Singapore as a country that has a weak defense force, they might not invest in us anymore and instead look to others in the neighboring areas such as Malaysia. Another issue would be our own local economy. Due to low birth rates, there will be a low number of Singaporeans, and that means a weaker national workforce. Singaporeans will then see themselves as premium workers and will not want to do blue-collar jobs and wish to be paid a premium for their services. Many larger companies in Singapore may not wish to hire Singaporeans and instead look for alternatives in foreign workers who are willing to earn less for that certain position or job. Apart from that, our Singaporean identity will also be affected. If there are less Singaporeans, our country will be made of more foreigners as more come in to work here. The Singapore quirks and culture, such as National Day Parade, Racial Harmony Day, will all lose popularity as foreigners bring in different practices. Practices such as praying in the open or different ideas may arouse conflict between locals and foreigners due to some of these practices, and as such, we may face even greater issues down the road. The final issue is that our new generation cannot support the aging population. You see, an aging population would most likely suffer from a lot of diseases, and some of these diseases are especially costly. The government subsidizes most of these diseases through MediShield and Medicare, but with all these taxpayers dwindling and a smaller pool of taxpayers, the government will have less money to build and provide such services. Without children, the elderly will have little to no financial support, and those facing diseases that are costly to treat, such as cancer, may not be able to afford such treatment. Finally, in conclusion, our team decides that public policies are only effective if they can work with one another in tandem. If they can bond with other incentives, they can form a greater public impression which further emphasizes them to do a certain act, such as in putting the baby bonus together with other actions or having the stop at 2 put with many disincentives. They can all achieve one common goal, but the baby bonus is not there yet, and we feel that more incentives should be put in place such that the baby bonus can take off and our fertility rate can finally grow up once again.